Thanks for coming out to our live show, everybody. It's amazing. The whole point of tonight's discussion is to zoom out and have a look at the challenges AI is posing to democracy before these changes run over the top of all of us. We make sense of the world in snippets through our feeds, through our own experience, but it's easy to feel it's all coming at us and we are just invisible bystanders. So tonight we're going to try to make sense of the impact of AI on work, culture, the media, and how we make our collective decisions about the future. And joining me are my partners on the burning platform, founder and chair of Digital Rights Watch, Lizzie O'Shea. Welcome, Lizzie.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Dan Stinton, CEO of Healthengine.
Thanks, Peter. Good to be here.
And Dan, thank you for inviting us to your private club, which is extremely on brand to our resident tech bro. So we started this podcast during the pandemic, and we all come at these issues from different perspectives. So we're going to talk about a bit of that in a moment. But Dan, we met when you were running Guardian Australia. Now you're running a tech startup. So your contribution is normally the butt of our jokes, but it's also...
I'm sure it will be tonight as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Lizzie, Digital Rights Watch, for those that don't know, is probably the sum of Australia's civil society when it comes to technology. Tell us a little bit about
so Digital Rights Watch is nearly 10 years old now. I'm a founder and the chair, and our mission is to advocate for freedom, fairness and fundamental rights for all those who engage in the online world. Generally, what we try to do is engage in policy questions, do campaigning, bring a human rights approach to technology policy. And we're really excited to talk to anyone who wants to work with us on these issues, no matter their background, to build a strong and vibrant movement that can hold the tech industry to account and also make sure that elected representatives know who it is that they work for.
We're also going to be joined by some terrific guests, the member of Curtin, Kate Chaney. Thanks for coming along, Kate, and bringing some of your crew. Also, Union's WA Secretary, Rikki Hendon. Thanks, Rikki, for being part of it. And a mystery performer who will reveal himself later. He might be sitting in the front row. But the most important people in the room tonight are you. Whether you're here or one of those who have registered online, we want you to be part of this discussion. I'm a bit of a junkie for Menti. We'd love you to use the QR code to feed in because we're going to ask you things. We've also got a few contests to do during the course of the evening. So has everyone done that? Is everyone in? Okay. Let's start with a little question to get our thumbs going. If I've already gone on, they want to go back. Hold on. Kate was slow on the uptake. That's gonna, so we QR in, and then we're going to start with a very simple question. Did everyone get in? On the scale of whether you think you're really tech savvy or a Luddite, where do you sit? Like, where is the room? Dan, you're tech savvy, although I might add that anyone that calls themselves tech savvy probably isn't tech savvy, but where do you sit on that?
I'm the butt of your jokes already. We haven't even started.
Sorry,
so
I know it's starting early. I'll get them out of the way.
Yeah, well, I run a technology company. Healthengine is the name of it. And, you know, I have seen the benefit that technology can bring to society and the economy at large, I guess, or economy and society at large. And, you know, prior to that, as you mentioned, I was previously managing director of The Guardian. That publication wouldn't exist in Australia if it wasn't for technology and for the internet and digital media. So, you know, I've seen the best of it. There's obviously lots of downsides that come with it too. But, yeah, I guess I'm tech savvy, and I guess I'm an advocate for tech as well.
What are we with the room? A lot of people in the middle. You're kind of mixed feelings.
I've got mixed feelings. I would like to describe myself as a critical consumer of technology. I'm interested and I love the Luddites, so you'll talk about that in a sec. So I don't think it's fair to say that I just think tech is all bad, because I want to be in this space because I want to make it good and want to put people at the centre of it. But it's hard to do that in the structures in which we find ourselves at present. So where does that put you?
I'm a Luddite. I'm a proud Luddite. I want more people to know about the Luddites. How many people have heard of the Luddites? Most people think it's someone that can't reboot their computer. But I'll tell you what I love the Luddites. These were workers whose life were disrupted by an inappropriate Application of power. They were weavers and stocking makers who did well-paid communal work until new machines automated it and took it from their home to the factory. This is in the 1810 to 1813 in the northern counties of England. And the Luddites took a stand over the way technology was introduced and the way it was driving down wages. It was erasing their expertise. It was replacing their work with kids in the factories. So what did they do? They broke the machines that were sent to replace them, and they burned the factories that ousted them, and they waged this campaign across England that went for a number of years. They were also really good campaigners. Like the Luddites were an avatar. Ned Ludd was a fable from 50 years previously that they congregated under. They used the early media to get their word out. They were a leaderless movement. They were targeted, they were strategic, they picked off the worst of factory owners to educate the many. And the full weight of the crown was deployed against them, and they were ultimately crushed. Many were hanged, others were transported to Australia. And they lost the narrative clearly, and they became a historical punchline. But from the wreckage, the first guilds were formed that led to the unions, that led to the factory acts, that led to the civilization of the Industrial Revolution. So anyway, the Luddites are my heroes, and I'm proud to be called one, and I want more people to know more about them. There's an amazing book by Brian Merchant called Blood in the Machine, and I urge you all, it's on your reading list. On the back of there, you've got a reading list. I urge you all to know more about it. So that's my little rant on the Luddites, and hopefully that is something you can all take away with. But if you look about the way AI is being marketed and introduced into many workplaces at the moment, it feels like we are in the middle of a similar moment to the one the Luddites faced. We're told change is inevitable, that you have to accept that jobs are going to change rather than ask questions about it. So I am interested again in what you guys think about the trade-off between opportunity and risk when it comes to AI. And maybe, Lizzie, we've got to sort of define what AI is before we get too deep into this. But while you guys are doing that, I'd also like to invite Rikki up to the stage. But Lizzie, how do you define AI?
Yeah, this is a question I get asked a lot. Like on one level, it's a marketing term. It was a term developed by a set of researchers who wanted to dominate their field in the mid-20th century. And they used it as a label for other tools of machine learning that have been around for a lot longer. But I think when people talk about AI, they mean many different things, and it's quite context specific. In general, there are different ways to define it. Rather than strictly giving a computer a set of instructions, you feed it a sample response and then ask it to perform that activity on a different data set, and it uses probabilistic methods, right? So that's one way of defining it. And it then highlights some of the things that are unknown about how these conclusions are drawn. But more simply, I suppose the other way to think about it is large data sets where computers are deployed upon them to detect patterns, to infer things, to draw conclusions. And commonly we think about this in relation to large language models where you put a prompt in and what you get in response is not an example of the machine thinking, but a probabilistic answer of what it considers to be correct based on past data sets where it's used pattern detection and analysis to work that out. So there's different ways of defining it, but I think what that means is in terms of the inputs, we're looking at accumulation of large data sets, accumulation of computing power, and then not an example of thinking or generation of new ideas, but analysis that looks very compelling or gives us a sense of a theory of mind on the other side of that prompt, but a probabilistic answer in return.
Yeah, Dan, a lot of the talk on AI is the big brain. I think you use it in a different way. You're more using it to analyse small data sets at times.
Yeah, and it's not new thinking, right? So where we are getting huge benefit from AI is in two areas. So the first one is in customer support. So about 65% of our customer support queries at Healthengine now are managed by or are responded to by an AI, by a bot effectively. And I would argue that is making the work of my customer support team better, because in almost every case, that is answering the same question 100 times over, like all day long, 7 days a week, right? So now those very mundane, repetitive tasks can be handled by a bot, and the more complex tasks that require interaction with a human can get to the forefront, and there's more time for that. So I'm seeing the benefit of it. Now, look, it's not new thinking, but it is automating the really boring part of work and making work better. That's one part of it. The other part of it where we're seeing huge benefits is on the dev side, the engineering side. And it's a similar story, right? So we're using AI generated code to automate the first code review, for example. So relatively mundane tasks, and we're now able to outsource that to a machine, and that's enabling us to be much more productive than we were previously. Now, before we get too carried away, the work that was being carried out prior to this was being done by relatively junior and new members of the workforce, and there isn't really a need for those people anymore. So that is a problem, because where are the engineers and customer support people going to come from as they come through? But the work that is being done by the people in my organisation now is much better than it was before.
Rikki, where are you seeing it across all your different members? So, Unions WA is the peak of all the unions, public sector, private sector. How are you seeing it? Yeah.
We're good. Yeah, look, there's no way you don't see it in some way. Some areas are more obvious than others. I know there's going to be a bit of a reflection on, media and creative industries. So that's a very obvious example about where we're seeing it significantly and where it is already displacing jobs. But we're seeing it really everywhere, like from retail to, and I think that manifests obviously in obvious things that we all experience, like the automated checkouts, but also in rostering practices. And some of those are really challenging for workers, because when you've got something that's automating the rostering, what it doesn't take into account is understanding who you are as a person, how work fits into your life, and all of your other needs that only a human being manager kind of can really identify. So the rostering stuff is a real issue. Task allocation in a number of industries, from retail and hospitality to the gig economy. That's obviously a sort of a way that's manifesting there. So we see it absolutely everywhere. In the finance sector, absolutely everywhere.
Yeah. Retail's really interesting. Like, it's gone hardcore into automated checkouts, which most people hate. And now the latest thing is and so they hate it so much they start shoplifting. So now they've got facial recognition technology to track the customers. And now they've got staff wearing body cameras because staff are taking it out on. And so all those technology solutions are for a problem that is that you no longer get to talk to a person anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And, I know Ben Harris of the SDA, the branch secretary here, would say there's been a massive spike in customer aggression, and it's being taken out on people who are largely low-income wage earners who are experiencing horrific kind of occupational health and safety issues, psychosocial and physical injuries because of that customer aggression. Yeah.
I've got a famous economist, Darren Acemoglu, won the Nobel Prize last year. I never thought I'd put those words in the same sentence, favourite economist. But he has this theory that the only way you drive productivity is if you put the technology in the hands of the workers. Again, on the reading list, it's an amazing book, Power and Progress, that basically says that over the 1,000 years of technological change, it is only when the technology is used as a tool rather than a replacement that you get the productivity. And Lizzie, it makes sense on a way, and the fact that that's not the starting point as well.
It does, and some of the early research suggests this. I just quoted this research to Dan the other day, and he tried to argue with the numbers, which I thought was funny, because he's got a particular approach to using technology and he deploys it well, I have no doubt. But MIT recently released a report which found that for enterprises making use of generative AI, ChatGPT and the like, 95% of them in the United States have documented zero productivity benefits, which is an astonishing figure given how much money is being spent on this industry, right? So one of the conclusions of that report, this is out of MIT, a lab that is focused on AI technology, obviously into this kind of field. One of the conclusions they draw is that better deployment, better use cases, better improvement or greater improvements in productivity would come from bottom-up approaches to deployment, engaging with workers rather than top-down imposition of tech that is then sought to be imposed on people in their workflows. That was the recommendation out of that report. Now, I'm sure Dan doesn't do that as a CEO, of course, so he gets to fall into the 5%. But before we let Dan have his say, I did want to ask what Rikki thought about that, because I think it is interesting to think about what is the capacity, or how do we get workers involved in that discussion. Oh, I've just cut him off, hasn't I? He's seething.
That's all right. I'm used to this. You go, Rikki.
Look, I actually don't think this is rocket science at all. Like, from a union perspective, no matter what sort of change might be afoot, whether it's AI or anything else, what we would always say is that nobody understands the work like the people doing the work. The workers understand the work the best. They experience daily what may be the challenges of the work and where there might be room for improvement that improves their experience, but also, the delivery of the service or the production of the good. So yeah, look, it makes entire sense to engage people at the earliest possible moment when you're even considering some sort of change in this space, to help engineer how it should look, because there are things. The worst experience I have had as equaliser. That's actually a really hard question. I've had many worst experiences as a union official, but the most frustrating one is when you have an employer who has worked for maybe 12 months or more on some new initiative that they're going to introduce into the workplace. They've done all this work quietly in the background with a handful of their executive and an external consultant, and they present it at some sort of union meeting as a fait accompli, and the workers look at it and go, this isn't going to work. Yeah. It's not going to work because you haven't considered X, Y, and Z. And then the employers spent a ton of money on it, heaps of money all that time, they've got to save face. So instead of listening properly and going, oh, maybe we need to pause and rewind, they just plough ahead, and inevitably, you end up saying, "I told you so."
Yeah, we did. We will finish with you, Dan. I'm promise. We did work with the Human Technology Institute testing Asimov's theory with nurses, and it was so interesting. When you give people the information, they are really clear on the positive use cases, get rid of the paperwork, help me get that through quicker so I can spend more time, but do not go near the carer. They knew exactly where the lines would be. And at the end of it, the guys from the uni said, that is so much better than anything we ever got from a consultant. Dan, defend.
Well, I'm going to be in furious agreement.
That's very disappointing, Dan.
Yeah, sorry. I won't make the mistake of arguing with the statistics again, although I might question the foundations of that study. But anyway, but the point I would make, which I think is consistent with your views, right, is so if you take how the coders in my organisation have used this, it is 100% a tool. And by the way, it wasn't by me coming to them and saying, hey, I think you should use this thing. I don't have a computer science background. They'd laugh me out of the room. What it was is a bunch of individuals who were, obviously tech savvy, they're computer scientists, but experimenting this, seeing the benefit of it, starting to deploy it before anyone even knew what was going on, their peers seeing it, and it became something which, everyone sort of realised was a really useful tool. So, I guess it kind of demonstrates your point, right? It top down is inevitably, I don't think it fails every time, by the way. That's going to sound defensive, but certainly it's much better when the people who are closest to the work have the opportunity to use it as a tool, and that's certainly what we've seen.
And just to round it out in the context of this, what that says is that it needs to be used democratically, and not democratically like a vote at an election time, but democratically as in workplace democracy. I'm really interested to see how the unions develop ideas of things like works councils, Rikki, and I think there is a real opportunity there.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think there need to be structures put in place that properly enable workers to be able to input into these decisions and bring their expertise to the table. I think there needs to be a lot of work to figure out what that actually looks like. Though the theory, the concept is there, but what is the actual mechanism?
Yeah, because power's not given up easily, we know. Hey, we could talk about work all night, but we're not, because it is time to play. Is this AI or human? I'm going to do show of hands instead of using your thing, because I can't make the bully thing work. Let's see, try one more time.
Seems appropriate.
No. What do we reckon? I'll give it a couple more seconds. So is this AI
Dust
or human?
on the wind, boots on the ground, smoke in the sky, no
Oh, yeah, yes,
peace
Shazam.
found. Rivers run red, the drums roll slow. Tell me, brother, where do we go? Raise your hand
Show of hands. Who reckons that's AI? Who reckons it's human? In fact, and I don't know if the slide's going to work, Jeffrey, that is a creation called Velvet Sundown. Over 3 million downloads on Spotify. Some have suggested it's an art hoax. The band's official social media channels say the group was an AI creation that was not quite human, not quite machine, but living somewhere in between. Spotify's revealed it's removed 35 million spam tracks from its platform over the past year as artificial intelligence tools increase the ability of fraudsters to create fake music.
I particularly love the guy who automated music production and then automated the listening of music that was produced through automation to create a revenue stream for himself from Spotify before he got busted.
And Danielle did make the point that the dude there looks like the AI creation of every half attractive guy who might have started a band as well. All right, we'll do another one. Are we working yet? I don't think so. We won't even bother. But put the second song on, Jeff.
We used to scream to feel alive, but now
What do we reckon? Is it feeling good? All right.
So much dude music, I have to say.
I know. AI? Human? Yeah. This is not an AI. This is a guy called Lucas Woodland who is in a human band called Holding Absence. But the music is AI because the AI is from another band called Bleeding Verse who train their music on Human Absence, who are a Welsh post-punk band and have overtaken them on Spotify on downloads, which has really pissed our friend Lucas off. It took them 10 years to build their body. It took the AI 2 months to overtake them on Spotify. All right, song number 3. Again, don't worry about your phone. I hate technology. Last song, please, Jeff.
I will throw the pieces in the fire.
Hey.
Dig up underneath us, change the tide. You
What do we reckon?
won a million times.
Human? AI? Oh, say that again. Let's see the numbers. Human? That's better. AI? It's human. He's here. Lachlan from Little Guild, which is a Perth band that is... It does all sorts of things, including Kate Chaney fundraisers. What's it like to be mistaken for a bot?
Sorry?
What's it like to be mistaken for a bot?
Like I said, I'm going to take it for a compliment. You know, that means it's polished. But yeah, no, it's kind of freaky. I actually knew of the Velvet Sundown like a few months ago, and I got really pissed off about it because I saw they were, getting like 1 million, 2 million streams, and we just maybe hit like 50,000 monthly listeners, and I was like, oh my god.
So tell us a bit about your band, your Perth locals. Like, what's been your journey and how much work have you guys put into it to be a really well-known Perth local band?
Yeah, we've been doing it for about 4 years now, and it's been good. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. There's not a lot of money in it. We haven't seen much money in it at the moment, and we still haven't. But, I guess it's just a time game with music. Like, you hear, like, artists and bands who don't make money for years and years. Like REM, for example, they didn't get big until their 3rd or 4th album, which is just insane. And then you see bands like the Velvet Sundown or whatnot, getting huge after like one album that's created in like, I don't know, a month less.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And, the Tech Council's calling for a general exemption from copyright law, the right to mine text and data, including music. How's that gone down with you guys and the industry in general?
Not a big fan of it. Not a big fan. It's just kind of annoying, I guess, because we put so much time into recording a song or an EP. The average cost of a song is minimum $2,000 to $3,000, and with some of these AI softwares, you can create a song in minutes. And as shown before, people can't tell. I can't tell. I thought the second song was completely real, wasn't made with AI. So it is scary, but it is inevitable as well.
Is it?
I think it is.
Do we need to label, for instance, so at least people can make an informed choice?
I believe in transparency, 100%. I don't like how Spotify is doing it at the moment, where you can't tell if it's real or fake because it's kind of deceiving people. But I think it is inevitable. There will be this new kind of stream of people creating AI music. Like, it's already a thing where people are putting prompts into AI music softwares, creating a song, and then calling themselves musicians.
But it will be terrible, right? So there is a brief little bit of hope here, or a bit of hope that you can take from what's happening now, right? So the fact that vinyl records have become popular again suggests to me that people value the human creation and the craft of it, right? So, I mean, this is happening in music, this is happening in social media, where half of your social feed is now synthetic. It's happening in movies, we talked about it on the last show. It's going to be a whole bunch of like AI-generated slop passing off as artwork. My hope is, and I feel confident that actually there will be a sizable proportion of people that will feel this way, that will seek out music which is 100% human created and will be prepared to pay for it, just in the same way that people are prepared to pay for vinyl records. But I don't know, am I kidding myself?
No, you're right. I think that live shows and live performances will skyrocket in the next few years because people do crave that authenticity. But it's also, this is an analogy, for example, like I don't like race car driving at all. I hate race car driving. It's boring, but I need a car. I need to get from point A to point B. And I feel like for most people, they like music, they'll put a song in the car, but they don't love music like I do. So I think when AI gets better at creating these songs, people will just go, that sounds like, AC/DC or Pink Floyd or whatever. And I think a lot of people who don't care a lot about the arts and a lot about music will just put it on because it's cheap. They could get it for even cheaper than what Spotify is. That's my fear. I hope I'm wrong.
Lizzie, we've got a very complicated graph up here, which is almost the Ocean's 11 of how the heist occurs. Do you want to just take people through what actually goes on when music is repurposed as AI?
So I was trying to put on a slide some basic explanation of how large language models work, but the same kind of applies in relation to music. So what occurs is that web crawlers, they don't look like spiders, notwithstanding that slide, they go around the web and do...
What are web crawlers?
Web crawlers is a program, but it's automated to go and visit websites. And traditionally that's been done for search engines to be able to assess the content and then provide it into an index so that when you search on a search engine, you get results that are relevant to you based on the criteria of that search engine. So web crawlers go around and check websites and index them. They index the web. Now they also do other things and they collect data. So there's a protocol called robot text which is designed to tell crawlers what they can and can't do with websites, and it's not always well respected by companies that are making large language models in particular or big data sets for training models. So that's the functionality. There's automated bots going around collecting information from the web. And they take it from everywhere. They obviously don't ask permission. I don't know whether they've got probably some of Lachlan's songs, whatever it might be. Then what occurs is that has to be plotted on a graph turned into data points. And the way that's done, at least with language, is that words are positioned in space and have vectors associated with them. And the idea is that the closer the words are in space, the more proximate they are in meaning. And with the addition of vectors of directional criteria as well, it allows these models to become more sophisticated and learn how language is put together and then perhaps assess how metaphor is used or how homonyms work. So that's the idea, but it's relational. So you can see in there, when you see the coding, the black box, it describes how King is high royalty but neutral gender, which I think is an interesting observation. It's not male gender, it's neutral gender. So you can also understand how biases that might exist in data sets that we use to plot out words within space for the purposes of creating a large language model might be exacerbated or continued throughout the responses that you get when you put a prompt in, and you may not be able to see how that discrimination works. So one example before I hand the floor to others is there was some research done in the US where some researchers were posing as job seekers, and they were saying, I'm a woman and I'm applying for a job in the medical profession at a particular level, and I'm a man applying for the same job. What salary should I request? And the difference between genders was extreme, kind of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's because these models are looking backwards. They're learning on data that already exists and then plotting that on the graph to be able to provide probabilistic responses. So it's no surprise that some of the pre-existing biases we have in large data sets are reproduced.
And that is why it will never create something new in music or in literature either. I just want to finish off this section by quoting Nick Cave. Songs arise out of suffering, by which I mean they're predicated upon the complex internal human struggle of creation, and well, as far as I know, algorithms don't feel. ChatGPT's melancholy role is that it's destined to imitate and can never have an authentic human experience, no matter how devalued and inconsequential the human experience may in time become. Lachlan, that's what you're up against. So I think we all wish you luck, but, how do you feel about that?
Oh, well, I agree wholeheartedly. I think what he's getting at as well is that AI doesn't have a perspective. I could write a song and a person next to me could write a song, and the song could sound completely different to each other. They could be about the same thing, but it could, my perspective could be completely different to someone else's perspective. And I don't think AI has a perspective. Like you said, it's just going backwards and seeing what's already been done. And
like a cover band.
It's essentially like a cover band when you put it like that. So yeah, I think it'll be okay. People do crave authenticity, and they do crave different perspectives. So yeah, well, that's my hope at least.
Hey, thanks for being part of it, Lachlan. Dan, we are going to move to talk about the next bit of our challenge to democracy, which is while we're losing our culture, we are also losing our shared sense of reality. Before we get you to describe what's happening to the media, interested from people, I think this thing's going to be working again, we may as well give it a crack. What's your main source of news these days? Do you still use mainstream news? Are you using an aggregator? Or are you just seeing what comes through your feed on social media? Look at that, it's working again. What a relief. While that's going on, so, we met when you were managing director of Guardian. Before that, you worked community radio in Perth, you worked for Yahoo and Seven. What's actually happened over the last few years?
Yeah, so it's been a pretty grim period, obviously, for the media, right? So and this chart probably demonstrates it. So I'll give you a bit of bio because I think it's relevant. So I started out as a print journalist, right? So I wrote for the West Australian and street press magazine called Hype, which some of you might remember, and even Scoop magazine. So it's going back a long time. But when the internet first came along, it was actually fantastic, right? Because all of a sudden you were able to reach these new audiences, and so not only did you have the print advertising, but you had the digital advertising coming through as well. Now, the big change happened, and this is no great insight, many people have documented it, but the big change happened that classifieds revenue, which was really what underpinned newspapers in particular, migrated online, right? So your Seek, your car sales and the like basically took control of things. And that had a massive impact on the revenue stream that supported the traditional newspaper model. So that was the first thing. And then just as news was sort of starting to recover from that, and I was at the West actually when this was sort of starting to happen, then we saw basically the rise of data-driven advertising and the importance of data for targeting. And when you need data for targeted advertising, you really have to have massive scale. And the two biggest companies in the world that have the most scale, in advertising at least, are Google and Facebook. So classifieds hit us first, then Google and Facebook and data-driven advertising hit us next, and it's been pretty grim ever since. Now, the third disruption, which is taking place right now, is it's already bad enough, right? But now there's an increasing proportion of people, and look, I'm one of them, I guess, who is just getting their information not from the traditional news mastheads that many of you selected a moment ago, but from ChatGPT and Google Gemini primarily, right? And those models are going out and scraping the existing traditional publishers and giving answers back. So if someone wants to find out what is happening, I don't know, with the latest of Trump's policies, it's pretty hard to keep up, obviously, then ChatGPT can give you the answer. You don't have to go and visit the New York Times to find that out anymore, and you can get an answer there. And so that's just really impacting on the amount of click-through traffic, and that traffic is used to monetize with advertising and with subscriptions and the like as well. So that's what happened on the commercial side, right? The bigger concern, though, is what is happening on the editorial side of things, right? And this is where I think we have a real problem for democracy. And this is, in my mind, the biggest risk from the emergence of this technology. So it was bad enough when people started getting their news primarily from social media, right? Because as many people have said, social media algorithms, they prioritize engagement. The most engaging content is the most sensational, the most conspiratorial. And so it wasn't necessarily the news that was most important that people were getting, it was the news that was most salacious and the like. And so that warped people's perspective on what news was happening in the world. And that's why we've seen the rise in conspiracy theories and those sorts of things. What's happening now is that and it's nascent, but it's growing very quick. What's happening now is that more and more people are going to be getting their news from the models themselves. And what worries me is that it was already pretty opaque with the algorithms, but now we're going to see that in an environment entirely driven by these large language models. And we have no idea of the agenda of these large language models and what output they're going to be generating for people. And that's being driven also by the rise of this total AI-driven slop, right? And news slop, which has been going out there and being used to train these models. So what's going to be the impact on that on people's information diet now? It's a pretty grim picture.
And one of the challenges is there's almost a product being launched every week, and everyone looks at the individual products, but then there's the way they connect as well. So just in the last week or so, we've had Sora, which I'm going to ask Lizzie about in a sec, which is basically a deep fake engine. You've also got the rise of intimate AI companions, just a little friend in your ear telling you everything you want to hear, plus advertising inside LLMs. Now, you put those three up. What does that mean for an election?
Yeah, well, Sora, people may have seen, is the latest product to come out of, or the latest iteration of one of the products to come out of OpenAI, and it's what they describe as a fully synthetic social media service. So by invite only, you can go on there and generate deep fake videos. I think there's a real question around here what the utility of this is at all. It's not clear to me, and I'm asking this question of everybody because I'm interested to know if anyone can come up with an answer. Now, the problem I don't think is that you'd necessarily believe every video that comes out of Sora as being true, but that you start to not believe any video content you see at all. And what does that do for the information ecosystem? How do you make it easy for people to find reliable information or trusted news sources in circumstances where there is so much fake content being generated? And I think what is clear here is that these companies are experimenting on people. And in fact, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, wrote a blog saying exactly that. We will iterate, we will make mistakes, and we'll change how we're doing things. I think this is a business model in search of profit. I don't think they know how they're going to monetize these things, and they're experimenting on people. They have an approach to these product launches that is to seek forgiveness rather than permission. And I don't think that's acceptable in any other industry, and I don't know why it's acceptable here. But the potential of how they will monetize is very dark in my view, and there is huge pressure to monetize. We're talking about vast sums of money invested in these businesses and huge amounts of pressure to start returning some money on that investment in circumstances where at the moment they've got very limited capacity to do that. So lots of pressure to try and monetize their audience.
Yeah, if this was a pharmaceutical or a car, you would test it before it went into the market. But the race is on, Dan, and there is a real story that there are two things that we don't talk about. One is the amount of energy that needs to be burnt to drive these, and the fact that this could well be a bubble.
Yeah, a bubble, and also just the economics of it are vastly different to what has underpinned the digital economy up till now, right? So typically, a digital businesses like mine, for example, up until the advent of AI, would build products, and then the cost of service of another customer buying that product was effectively zero. It was a zero marginal cost product. The difference with this technology is it requires so much compute, which is very, very expensive. So the margins that you're making on this are so much smaller, right? And this is the concern, right? So OpenAI, they're the accidental consumer tech company in a way. They've got millions and millions of consumers, billions in fact, that are using their tech every week. But their ability to monetize that is going to be much more constrained than it was in the previous era. And so the way that they're going to have to do that is going to be much more challenged. And I think that's why we're going to have to see things like Sora and deepfakes, which just should be outlawed in my view. I can't see a use case which is appropriate for that. But anyway, that's another story. Kate, perhaps you can help with that. But the economics are not the same. Therefore, the pressure on these companies is going to be so much higher. And I think that's a dangerous thing when they've got virtually no regulation constraining them at the moment.
The clock's ticking against us. It is time for a change of pace. Lizzie's privacy reveal with our very, very special guest, very brave guest, Kate Chaney. Kate, welcome to the red chair. How have you been reflecting on the conversation so far, apart from the fact that I can't work my technology?
That's definitely the funniest.
So far.
And that we said, not to stash the machines, you can't make the weapon. Yeah. Look, it's really scary. It is actually, as I talk about not being able to work.
Yeah, another Luddite. I love you.
I think it's really scary. And the speed of change is one of the things that is the most threatening when it comes to regulation, because governments, by definition, reflect community values rather than predicting them. And so it takes a while for laws to be made, and things are changing so fast. I mean, at one point I looked up what the AI developments had been between when Parliament sat in February and when it sat again at the end of July, and it was pretty mind-blowing. So I think that's one of the real challenges we face, is just the speed.
And the tech industry's all over Canberra at the moment, aren't they? And it's like a race. Like, we've got to get there before China. We've got to get there before other countries. Like, are you picking up that dynamic? There's pressure just to wave things through?
Look, I think possibly, and definitely the US-China, competitive environment is a factor. And I think there's genuinely open questions about what role Australia can play in that context. I do think that there's nervousness about it, but from the government perspective, they need to deliver on productivity, and AI seems to be the big golden shiny thing on productivity. So there's some pressure to Australia is behind many other countries when it comes to AI take up. So there is some pressure to realise those benefits, apparent benefits. But I think there is also a recognition that there need to be guardrails in place to build confidence so people are willing to realise those benefits.
And to reinforce the need for guardrails, we might let Lizzie do her work.
Right, so this is my segment, which is a little game we like to play at Digital Rights Watch with our friends, which is This Is Your Life in Data, Kate Chaney. And so we are very grateful that Kate has agreed to do this. When I was telling people I was doing some open source research on Kate, about 4 people told me they had a crush on her, which I thought was quite sweet. So I feel like I've really been stewing in Kate over recent times, so I don't know whether I'm...
They were all AI. I made them.
So my argument is, if we want responsible and safe and democratic AI, we need to start with ethically and transparently sourced data sets. And that's exactly what I've not collected right now for my presentation today. So I've done a bit of snooping on Kate, and the idea is to show how big your digital footprint is. I haven't done anything illegal, you'll be pleased to know. But I'm more just trying to highlight to you how far your data can go. Normally I do this for a whole hour. Kate's lucky we're only doing it for 10 minutes. So we'll get to look under the hood. So first up, congratulations, Kate. You've scored pretty well on this front. I can only find that your personal email appeared in 2 data breaches outside of Australia, which is pretty good. I've been dinged in 9. Does anyone want to guess how many Peter's in?
It's quite a few.
Yeah, it's quite a few. Dan?
I guess it's definitely more than 2.
It's 9. 9 with me, Dan. Anyway, so that does not include Australia, because Australia has different rules around transparency on data breaches. Now, I know you were dinged in the Qantas data breach because pretty much everyone was in Australia, including 3/4 of the judiciary, or the whole entirety of the judiciary, which makes determining some of these matters quite difficult. But I would say, according to the OAIC, 47% of Australians have actually experienced a data breach in the last year. And Qantas, in fact, is one of the largest holds one of the largest consumer data sets in the country, and can make inferences about you based on your preferences with associated and affiliated products. And it leverages this profile to sell you stuff, and it continually is seeking more information. All of these data breaches create risks for everybody who experiences them, including Kate. It's not possible to rely on good cybersecurity alone to protect your personal information anymore. What we need to impose is an obligation of data minimisation on corporations in Australia so that the incentives for criminal hacking are fewer, but also the impact of these kinds of data breaches is less devastating. Now, I'm sure Kate uses a password manager and two-factor authentication. Am I right, Kate?
Sometimes.
Anyway, we'll have a talk about that later. Okay, so moving on. Even if Kate had good cybersecurity, choices we make about consumer products have a real impact on our privacy. And major car brands, in fact, on sell information all the time. Now, I know, Kate, that you love to travel by that most environmentally responsible of vehicles, the bicycle. And I love the bicycle because it's not connected to the internet. But I also know that you like to drive a Toyota hybrid. And is there any chance you've read Toyota's privacy policy?
No, I have
No.
not read their privacy.
It's not great, I'll be honest with you. Toyota...
Took me a while to work out how to actually stop the mirrors from going out, let alone reading the privacy policy.
Need to have a talk to Toyota about that. Toyota collects a ton of data, way more than is necessary, I would argue, and they admit to sharing and even selling some of it with third parties for their own marketing purposes. Toyota has what it's called Drive Pulse, which uses sensor data from each trip to create a score for between 0 and 100 based on your driving behaviour. So that includes accelerating behaviour, braking behaviour, cornering behaviour. I don't think it includes mirror behaviour, but it might need to. It aggregates this score from all your past trips, and bad behaviour data is then also aggregated as well, so braking and the like. And you can imagine how this could be used in relation to things like insurance and the like. So I would argue that connected cars that are connected to the internet, have a whole range of risks and problems. Locational data as well is extremely revealing. It means that you can infer where someone lives, where they work, the health services they access, for example, the activities they do. This is very valuable to marketers. And it's also got other risks. So the first reported use of a vehicle in a family violence context was recorded in Tasmania. And this is an increasing problem for lots of service networks in that space. So locational information isn't explicitly covered by the Privacy Act, which I think is shocking. So it's not necessarily considered personal information. And that's because our laws were drafted 40 years ago. This was not a thing. So my argument is that Kate should stick with the bike. I think it suits her very well. Okay, so on to the other place in which we share a lot of information, which is social media. Now, Meta we've got a great photo of Kate from social media that I think everyone should look. Yeah. I love this. She looks so good. It's like something out of Boogie Nights. Now I'm understanding where all the crush comes from.
I thought she wouldn't be disappointed in it.
Anyway, I love this photo, so I had to put it up, so I hope Kate doesn't mind. Now, Meta has just changed its policy on personal information to allow it to use information shared on the platform right back to the beginning of Facebook to train its AI products. So even though at the time you shared this information, this product wasn't even conceived of, they're now using it to train their models. So posts right back to the beginning of the network, right back to 2010, when Kate's lovely husband shared this post, which I love. So looks like you didn't accept his friendship request. Okay, so I like Kate because she's clearly a bit anti-social media, or at least was at the time. So I'm not sure what the system's going to infer about their marriage, but I think it's a good sign personally. Now, I learnt a lot about Kate from her social media accounts and associated social media accounts, including birthdays, where her children go to school, health information about her, wedding anniversaries. Kate, do you know your wedding anniversary? Oh, okay. What is it? Oh, does she?
Don't put me on the spot like that. 25th of March.
Oh, okay, good. Yes, I can confirm that's true. So, so this includes also what I would say is health information. So health information can come from social media, which is very interesting for insurers. Now, I've got another photo of Kate. This includes alcohol consumption. I would classify that as health information. Now, does anyone know what splitting the G is? Yeah, okay, good. Does anyone not know what splitting the G is? Peter didn't know what it was.
I thought you meant spilt.
No, he thought I'd mistyped it because splitting the G is whether you can take a first sip and get the line of the beer exactly in the middle of the G of the Guinness. And Kate did it!
That may actually be what got me re-elected.
So alcohol consumption is health information. This is very interesting information for insurers. I think personally, enjoying a pint of Guinness every once in a while can be a real pleasure, and that it shouldn't be used to tailor health insurance premiums and the like, or say eligibility for social services. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't use social media. What I'm saying is we need to have the right to deletion. We need to have a fair and reasonable test about how information is used about you. We need to have purpose limits on how information is obtained via consent. We need a more expansive definition of health information so it's better regulated. All of these reforms to the Privacy Act could be made tomorrow, have been accepted as necessary by the government as well, but haven't been acted upon. Now, I'm going to wrap up in a sec. What I would say is I wanted to return to where we began. AI is trained and developed on data. So all this data that's being collected is now being used by companies to train their AI systems. And I thought, given what I've just learned about Kate splitting the G and her talent in that respect, I thought I was going to ask ChatGPT, what is Kate's relationship with alcohol? And this is the answer I got. It talked about how she grew up in a, quote, toxic and chaotic home torn apart by alcohol and anger. And the reference there is a website, Kate Chaney, but it's a different Kate Chaney. And it's mixed her up with other sources there that come from Kate's website. She's done a lot of great work around alcohol marketing and gambling marketing, which is close to my heart, which I think is really important. But if you were a voter and you were looking at using ChatGPT to get information about your elected representative, this is an example of a hallucination, a mixing up of two different people that gives a misleading picture of who Kate is. I just want to tell you that the person that exists as the equivalent of Kate Chaney, the other Kate Chaney, I should say, is she's actually a mentor, but she's got a history of alcoholism in her family. She also seems like a good person, but the equivalent I've got of the second Kate Chaney, the second Elizabeth O'Shea, is a parenting expert, so I look like I'm a really good parent. I'm lucky. But imagine if that wasn't you. You know, you can imagine if there was somebody there who you didn't want to be associated with. Now, what I would say is this kind of error may not have a huge impact, although I think this is actually interesting, the relevance of this impact. But what I would say is these AI systems are also being trained in really high stakes contexts. You know, so we are seeing AI uses of AI in warfare settings, for example, in places like the Ukraine and Gaza, where these kinds of systems are being used to generate targets, and associations with people can get you on a list, which is then a site of military activity. So they can be deployed in extremely high stakes settings, and we should be really worried about how we make sure these systems work and what checks and balances we have in place to ascertain whether they're telling us the truth. So I would argue in conclusion that it's almost impossible to move through the world without a pretty significant digital footprint. The data is often being used quite carelessly to train models that will make decisions about us, which may be very significant. We need stronger privacy protections. They are very popular with the electorate, and they are easy to implement, and they are a rights-respecting way in which we can improve the quality of these kinds of decision-making systems. Kate, is any of that a surprise to you?
The last bit, my chaotic childhood, is a little bit of a surprise. Don't tell my parents. But no, I mean, I think I try to be quite careful about my digital footprint, and I think if you're in the public eye, you're conscious of that. But certainly before I ran, we had a bit of a look around and thought about these things, and I think a lot of people have given up on this. They say, well, it's, sure, companies have got all this information about me, but that's fine, I've got nothing to hide, and we've given up. And I suppose trying to work out what is the level of privacy that protects you, and what is information that it's too late, or the value that you get from whatever you did to share it, you value more highly than it being out there. But they're not explicit decisions that we're making, and I think that's the danger of it. Is that we actually need, there's a certain amount of literacy involved in people making explicit decisions about their own privacy as well.
Yeah, and the big shift in the last couple of years has been privacy, even in a digital sense, was almost the idea of protecting, but it's moved into that. Now it's about the way that you are being perceived and what you're offering for the models to train on you on as well. So it's kind of, it's almost like a new opening of a new field where we need this privacy reform. And got to say, the government's taking a long time to get to the end game on this. There's been so many goes at privacy. It's hard. Guys, I know we're a little bit over, but we've got a couple more segments, and then we're going to put on some drinks. So this is really the pointy end of it. Like, how can democracy survive AI? If people want to put any thoughts into their little thing on their, if the technology is still working, but how do you think about this, Dan? How can democracy survive AI?
Well, we've touched on it, right? I think all of this comes down to the data itself and what these systems are trained on. And the single most effective way, probably the only way that I can think of, that we can actually protect the way that society functions now and our economy at large, our democracy at large, is if we put some protections in place around that data. That means much stronger privacy protections than we currently got. You've just prosecuted all the reasons why, all the areas that where we can improve that. I agree with all of them. I think that's what we need to do. And it also means not weakening our copyright protections, which are also being used to this. Like, the copyright is there for a reason, and if Australia continues to protect it, then we'll have a much healthier digital ecosystem and a much healthier economy as a result. So I think strengthen copyright, if anything, and also strengthen our privacy protections, and then maybe we've got a fighting chance.
Lizzie, where do you go?
Well, I think there are a lot of ways in which this technology is obviously going to touch on our lives. Now, we have talked about a few tonight, but there's others, like there's child protection and child safety, the experience of young people online. There's also things like environmental impacts. Like, we haven't managed to talk about everything tonight, of course. What I would say is it touches so many aspects of society that what we need is a strong, diverse movement of actors from different places, of community organisations, of unions, of other kinds of groups of people like creatives, to work together to ensure that we can come up with solutions, that we can make sure elected representatives who want to do the right thing are capable of standing up to this industry. These are some of the largest companies that humanity has ever seen. They are a formidable force. But we do sit in a country that does have a tradition of respecting the rule of law, that has a system of government. Some would say too much government. I don't agree. I think we've got lots of ways to make our voice heard at different levels of government. And if we work together with people with diverse interests, I think that's the way to protect ourselves.
Kate, how do we protect democracy? How do we survive?
So the thing that worries me the most from a democracy perspective when it comes to AI is the idea of people polarising and being in their echo chambers, and voter views being shaped by forces that we don't control. I find it really terrifying to think that a video can be made of me now to make me look like I'm saying something that I've never said, and so that's a scary thing. And I think, as you said, if we then can't believe anything we see, where does that leave us? And it feels like the debate now is caught between, do we let it rip or do we lock it down? And do we have one law to cover all AI, or do we try and plug the gaps in our existing laws? The reality is it's going to have to be a hybrid of all of those things. If we're going to make the most of the benefits, there have to be guardrails so people trust it. There are novel challenges that we haven't thought about that will need new regulatory frameworks, but there are also lots of gaps in our existing law that we can plug more quickly. And I think, as well as a national approach, we're going to have need to have some sort of a body, an AI commissioner or something, that can recommend to the government quickly and nimbly those, plugging the holes in our existing laws as they arise. Another massive part is digital literacy. And, right now, if you see a video, you still probably believe it, unless your kids say, rubbish, mum, that's not real, can't you tell? Which happens to me sometimes. But pre-bunking is much more effective than debunking misinformation. And so equipping people of all ages through the school system, but it's got to be for adults too in this transitional phase, and being able to actually learn what's real and what's not, and how to think critically about what they're seeing will be so important. And it's a race against AI progressing faster than we're able to inform people about what to look out for.
Yeah, for mine, it's actually a trick question, because I think the way democracy survives AI is more democracy. And one of the people that has really inspired me is Audrey Tang, who was the Taiwanese digital minister, who we brought out you. That's where we met each other last year, Kate. So Audrey, people heard of Audrey? She has a model of always-on deliberative democracy in Taiwan. And maybe Taiwan's a unicorn because of its place and time in history. But when Uber came in, there were citizen juries that were determining the rules of how the new technology would come in. And that idea of, in a way, our feedback loops at the moment, we've got 3-year elections and then we've got fortnightly opinion polls. And I'm not down on opinion polls because I do them, but I think there are other ways that we can create these loops, works councils, parents' councils. Like, where does the power on how the technology come out, where does that reside? Because at the moment when it's being pushed down with the business model, with pace being the number one priority and then sales the second, we haven't got a chance. So how do we build friction into that system? I know you're interested in this and it's just really hard to get people to change the way they look at it. But I just feel like more democracy is actually how we save democracy.
But so much of it depends on trust, and being able to trust what you see or what you hear is a fundamental part of informed decision making in a democracy. So getting that platform, there are some great opportunities with AI, and we're looking at a few trials of using technology to consult people more broadly and get more sophisticated input than just surveys. And I think there's great opportunities there. But there needs to be that platform of trust that underpins the system.
Yeah, Australia actually rates the lowest globally, last or close to it, on the key survey that's been done around the world around optimism in relation to AI, which I think is interesting. Even though we use it quite a lot, we're not very optimistic about it. But if you ask Australians in particular what might make them use it more, 83% that say that they'd be more likely to use AI systems where they're confident that there are international assurances in place or compliance with international standards. So I think that kind of approach to the technology is immensely popular with the public. You're pushing on an open door. So the question is, how do we get our elected reps, I think, to be the best version of themselves? And that's the challenge.
Last question for the night. And what we're doing here is what's known as quadratic voting, which is one of Audrey's things. So rather than everything being a binary choice, give you 100 points and allocate it. So what should we focus on? Reimagining the tech, regulating the tech, or resisting the tech? Why don't you make the case for reimagining, Dan?
Yeah, so look, again, I'll finish in my tech bro persona, but I think that there is a way that we can reimagine the tech to make it work for Australia, and it all comes down to data sovereignty and us having, some democratisation of how we use this tech and how we deploy it in Australia. So what that means to me is I hate the fact that in order for us to, even in my own business, to be able to run a lot of the tech that we're using, we're sending data over to America for them to be able to do whatever the hell they want with it. Australia needs to take control of this. That means more data centres. Now, obviously, they come with some problems as well. I'm not denying that. But I think more data centres in Australia and more sovereign control over that data is ultimately a good thing. And it also means politicians actually, people like you, Kate, with great respect, have to stand up to the US at the moment. Now, I know that's pretty fraught doing that at the moment, but standing up and saying, look, yeah, we're going to have a social media ban, whether or not you like it or not, and we don't really care because Australians want that, and actually standing up and doing what Australians want for the democracy, not just caring about what our trade relationships are with the US. I think that's a really important foundation that we need to build on.
Make the case for regulating, Lizzie.
Well, I would just say Dan just dropped a bunch of bombs that I don't agree with, but that's fine. That's true.
That's not unusual,
That's
though,
what we do every fortnight.
I feel I should just acknowledge it. So I'm a lawyer. I love laws. I actually do think there's a lot of regulation we could turn to right now, using examples from abroad, using examples that we've already canvassed within our own democracy, to introduce laws that would improve rebalance the power away from large tech companies back in favour of people. That includes privacy reform. It includes introducing transparency around algorithmic decision making. We can also have prohibitions on certain kinds of use cases. You know, in Europe, it's prohibited to use real-time facial recognition technology, for example. So there's lots of good ideas lying around, and I think we could turn them into laws quite easily. And there are regulators that exist that could do more work in this space with a bit of boost to certain kinds of their powers. There's also a whole range of laws that have a longer history on our books, like anti-discrimination law, like consumer protection law, which we could leverage. So it is not as though we are completely at sea when it comes to answering some of these questions. And I think there's a really important role for existing and new regulations to play in improving the situation.
And I know it's not mutually exclusive and resisting is down the line here, but I would want to make the case that I don't think we can regulate or reimagine unless we resist the path we're on at the moment, particularly with culture. Like, just don't listen to AI music. Don't accept, like, ask the questions about what is the source. And the same thing, if you're at work, don't just go to, AI and put out some slop because it makes you look smarter. Start with a blank page, because that's what makes you learn to think. Particularly, one of the most concerning things about even some of the convenient technology is it's robbing young workers of the chance to learn, because they're the ones that are expendable, because it's all for higher level thinking. I think it's really useful technology for people that are already in a position of power, but we've got to support young people to learn the basics so that they can actually have a future and get to that point of higher level thinking. So yeah, I'm a resistor, but join me. I'd get me up to 15 at least.
No one's moving, are they?
No. I think they've all given up with their with the phone now. But we've gone a little bit over. Look, we are at a really interesting moment. There is technology that could be transformative, but could equally be destructive. The good news is this is the moment to test all our beliefs, our frameworks, our values. Be part of what we're trying to do here. Listen to our podcast, but more importantly, join Digital Rights Watch. If you want to be involved in conversations in a non-social media setting, slow media, join the Democracy Sandpit we've set up. Use the reading list. There's some great books out there. Some of the best commentary at the moment is about thinking through this stuff. So be part of all that. But also, don't leave the future to the tech bros. Let's own it. Last thoughts and reflections, starting with Kate. We'll go around the...
I think there's a slight sense of paralysis in government at the moment, because it's moving so fast. Where do we start? And so the challenge really is going to be in prioritising, filling in the gaps we can fill in now, responding nimbly as things continue to develop. I don't know how useful resistance is. I think there can be pockets of resistance, but probably there's a fair bit of reimagining that needs to be done, and regulating just has to be done at the pointy bits. I introduced a private members bill that was about AI tools that are specifically designed to generate child sex abuse material. There's no good use case for those tools. There are things that we can do now, and you've named a number of them, Lizzie. Let's start with them. Let's not wait until we've got the perfect AI bill that does everything.
I would just say, if you're interested in these topics and you want to talk more about how you can get active, that's what our organisation is trying to do. Work with anyone who's interested in this topic, find common cause, and then build a movement that can stand up to the tech bros and help Kate fight the good fight in Canberra.
A special thanks to Michelle from Minderoo for supporting this tour as well. One of the reasons we've been doing this is to try to get people together. We would love you to hang around afterwards for a drink and just meet people you don't know, but particularly if you're with an organisation, link in with Digital Rights Watch, be part of teaching ourselves. This stuff is hard, like it is challenging. There's not often a black or white. A lot of it is grey. But for the first time ever, I'm going to give the final word to Dan.
I thought you were going to exclude me there.
That's our host.
I'm thrown. Look, I'm going to riff on the themes that you picked up before, Peter, which is, I think the key to this is being intentional about the media that you use and the technology that you use. I think don't rely on the algorithms to get your news and to get your information. Don't rely on these new large language models, as useful as they are, to get your information. And when you're using the tech, make sure you're using it for the right purposes. Don't just use it every single time. I think if everyone is just a little bit more intentional with how they use tech and how they consume their information, I think that we're all going to be better off for it.
On that note, thanks so much, everyone. It was a lovely audience. The future is not inevitable. Resistance is not futile. Kate, we can shape the future, but we need to do it together. Thanks, everyone.